Doctor, I was a little puzzled by your non-answers to Senator Blumenthal on, did you have any involvement whatsoever in the review of the contract of your former employer? And don't tell me you followed the law. I'm asking you a straight-up question. Did you have anything to do whatsoever in the review of the contract of your former employer?
Senator King, I did not review the contracts of my former employer.
Did you have any involvement whatsoever in that process?
Senator King, I am not a contracting officer nor a contracting authority. I do not have that authority. Only a warranted contracting officer has the authority to award, modify,
I
negotiate,
understand
or
that.
terminate a
I'm
contract.
asking you a pretty straightforward question. Did you have anything to do whatsoever with the review of the contract of your former employer? That's a pretty straightforward yes or no question. I did or I didn't.
Senator, I have not reviewed the contracts of my former employer.
That's not what I asked. I asked, did you have anything to do whatsoever with that review?
Senator, I have not reviewed any contracts of my former employer.
Okay,
Again, I'm not a
that's the third time
contracting
you've given me
authority.
that answer, and for the third time, I'm going to say that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, were you involved in any way whatsoever with the review of the contract of your former employer?
Senator King, I've answered that. I am not a contracting official or contracting authority. I have not
All right.
reviewed the contracts of my former employer.
Failure to answer that question, you just lost my vote on this nomination. In your opening statement, you used the term risks 3 or 4 times or 5 times with regard to the people under your supervision. I don't want the people under your supervision that are making decisions about benefits for veterans taking risks. What in the world did you mean by taking risks?
Senator, when you employ new technology, and I think you know that from your time at LL Bean, per our discussion when I visited you, there's opportunities for folks when you've got to learn your mistakes. You got to fail fast. You do that in a test environment, understanding the constraints of the technology and how it's going to interface with the legacy systems when you go to a live environment. So test it in a production environment. Fail fast, learn faster.
I just don't like the idea of a test environment and risk being taken with people's lives and disability compensation. You can take, if you're talking about working a model, that's one thing. But if you're talking about real people and real decisions, the idea of risks and experimenting is not acceptable. What role did you have in the whole contract cancellation process?
Senator King, I recommended a structure for proper review by career senior leaders who independently evaluated contracts to decide which ones to terminate, descope, or not renew.
I thought the bulk of the process was done by a fellow at Doge. Were you in charge of that? Did you bring him in? Do you consult with Mr., I can't remember his name, Levine or something along those lines?
Senator King, we have no Doge employees. They're VA employees.
I know, but the people who did the initial review of the contracts were Doge. Is that not correct?
They were VA employees, Senator.
They were VA employees. Are you familiar with Sahil Lavinia, programmer enlisted by Doge, which was then run by Elon Musk, who worked at the VA and developed the software that evaluated the contracts? You're denying that he ever was involved in this process?
Senator, I didn't say I denied he wasn't involved in the process, nor did I deny I know him. But what I'm clarifying for the record, they were VA employees.
He was a VA employee when
He was a
doing that
VA
work?
employee. He was a VA employee.
Do you feel that the contract review process was successful and effective?
Senator King, the contract review process has never been done before, but it did allow a lot of the senior leaders responsible, the career leaders responsible for their programs, to be made aware of several of the duplicate contracts that they had under their oversight.
Several thousands were canceled, wasn't it 16,000? There's been some dispute. The ranking member said 30-something. The number I've been using is 16,000. Isn't that the correct number? Canceled?
No, Senator. The correct number as of today is about 2,500 out of about 76,000.
Well, we could certainly, that's a number we can check. And you, in your answer to the questions of the committee, you said the FY '26 budget, this is direct quote, reflects no reduction in force, and yet I have the budget filing that says disability compensation minus 862 people. What am I missing? That sounds like a reduction in force to me. The budget of the administration for 2026 is 862 fewer people than were there the year before. Isn't that a reduction in force?
No, Senator, and I'm not sure the document that you're referencing, but
It's a VA document. It's general operating expenses, FTE by business line and management direction and support, subtotal. Disability compensation, minus 862 people.
Senator King, I wasn't involved in any of the budget development, and I have not been involved in any of the VBA operations.
Then why did you say the FY '26 budget reflects no reduction in force?
Because we haven't had a reduction in force, Senator. We had voluntary separation through VERA, VSIP, and DRP.
If somebody leaves, isn't that a reduction in force?
Not in,
You have fewer people to process claims, right? 862 fewer, according to the budget submitted by the administration.
and those are voluntary separations.
I understand that, but that's still 862 fewer people there to process claims.
Senator, I can't say if 862 people is going to impact the claims processing, and if confirmed, I will do a full workforce assessment.
Well, thank you. I have to say the contract cancellation process is one of the most disastrous I've ever seen in 25 years in this business. And to say that a person who was engaged in that will then become in charge of the Veterans Benefits Program, that's a lift for me.
What you just watched wasn't just a tense Senate exchange. It was a revealing moment about accountability, transparency, and what Democrats have been consistently warning about when it comes to oversight under the Trump-aligned agenda. Senator Angus King didn't come into that hearing looking for theatrics. He came with a very specific concern: whether this nominee had any involvement, direct or indirect, in reviewing contracts tied to her former employer. That's not a minor detail. That goes to the heart of ethics, conflict of interest, and whether someone can be trusted to act independently in a role that directly impacts veterans' lives. And what stood out immediately was not just the answer but the pattern of avoidance. Over and over again, King asked a simple yes or no question: were you involved in any way whatsoever? Not whether you had formal authority. Not whether you personally signed off. Just involvement. And instead of clarity, what we got was deflection hiding behind technicalities about not being a contracting authority.